Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to another edition of Encounters here on Atwal channel. We're bringing you an ordinary conversation with extraordinary people. Today we have a very extraordinary person, a man of many talents. He's a doctor, he's an MMA fighter, he's a singer, and he is a biting satirist. His name is Subaig S Kandola, and we welcome you to the Atwal channel Encounters.
Thank you. Khalsa,
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Subaig Singh, you are indeed a man of many talents. Where does it all begin? You're a doctor, you're an MMA fighter. Who are you? Who is this enigma?
Well, as explained before, I was born as a breech baby. So I was born upside down, and as my mum sometimes says, मेरा मुंडा पुट्ठा जम्मिया सीगा ते उन्हें सदा ही पुट्ठा ही रहना हैगा. So I have a tendency to do the unusual. So I think from an early age, I've probably not been quite normal, I'd say.
You're working your way through the stereotypes.
Yeah.
And destroying them one by one.
Well, yes, certainly. But again, it's not something I'm consciously trying to do. It's never been my agenda to purposely go out of my way to destroy a stereotype. I've always been somebody who believes in following their heart and just being themselves. And that's the only thing I've ever tried to do, is just to express myself and to be myself.
So you're an actual doctor.
Yeah.
An A&E doctor, saving lives.
Yes.
So with regard to that, was that sort of like a typical Asian family upbringing, Munda doctor bane, solicitor bane? How did that come about? Was that a chosen field?
Well, I was lucky in the sense that both of my parents were educated at a time when a lot of people weren't educated. They both studied in the UK, so I wouldn't say I had a pressure on me as such as some people talk about a real sort of pressure when their parents are not educated, and then they put pressure on their kids to become educated.
To be what they couldn't be.
To be what they couldn't be, yeah. But I'd say that it was kind of taken as a given in my family that I would go into some kind of a profession, not necessarily as a doctor. My younger brother is a solicitor, but I think the expectation was there that we would excel in a professional capacity, probably.
So he's a solicitor and you're a doctor?
Yeah.
We're breaking the stereotypes, we're attempting to do that.
Yeah.
But you have, though, because you've become a doctor, and a typical Asian stereotype would be you've become a doctor and that's it. You've now achieved what it was that you were supposed to achieve.
Yes.
The dream is complete, so to speak. But it hasn't stopped there for you.
No. For me, I was never satisfied as with that. I always used to. I've always resented being pigeonholed and being put into sort of like a typecast role. I used to find it very strange sometimes in community settings when people would come up to me, Dr. Saab, because I didn't want to be defined by my profession.
Yeah.
So I always found it odd when people greeted me that way, and I found it odd that people put doctors on such a pedestal, and I was always uncomfortable with that. So for me, I've always had mixed feelings about the profession and my role in it. I guess I never was satisfied to be just a doctor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but in an Indian sort of context, a doctor is one rung down the line from God.
From God, yeah.
From somebody who's saving people's lives. You have the power to save and not.
Yes.
But from being a doctor, from the limitations of that, of being pigeonholed, like you say, you didn't want to be pigeonholed as just a doctor, you moved on to sort of boxing and martial arts and MMA competitively.
Yes.
At what point were you a student of martial arts, and at what point did it become more than that and become competitive?
Well, my father was the biggest influence in my life regarding martial arts. He'd learnt martial arts as a youngster. He was from the Bruce Lee era. So he was a big Bruce Lee fanatic. He had all the Bruce Lee tapes, posters. He had nunchucks. He was a Taekwondo black belt, and he practiced martial arts at a time, in 60s, 70s UK, when it wasn't a hobby. It was a necessity for survival. He'd often tell me stories about being chased around, the back streets of Birmingham by skinheads on a Saturday, after football matches and things like that. My dad takes a keen interest.
He was gay study.
He was gay study, yeah, always has been.
So he's identifiable from a
identifiable. So in those days growing up, he would have been classed as a vulnerable target. Easy pickings for racist gangs. But he was also a very robust individual growing up. He was a good good fighter. He was a good street fighter, and he learned the hard way. So I took from my father's example. You know, he inspired me to get into martial. For a long time, we actually trained together. We used to go to taekwondo classes together, me, my younger brother, and my dad. And that was the first martial arts that we started off with. So coupled with that, I'd always had an interest in Sikh martial culture, Sikh military culture. That was always something, you know, inside me that I wanted to express somehow. People express it in different ways. For me, the way I expressed being a warrior, being a soldier, was through martial arts. So I started off with taekwondo. When I went to university, I thought, well, I know how to kick now. You know, I want to learn something close range, you know, something practical, street effective. So I started learning Wing Chun. Then after I started learning that, then I started learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When I was at university, the UFC was becoming very popular, and you could see how you needed to be a good grappler. You know, if you wanted to be a good fighter in the modern context, you needed to be a good grappler and somebody that could fight on the ground as well. Started learning Jiu-Jitsu. Then I started learning wrestling. And it was only actually when I started work as a junior doctor that, and when I'd accumulated quite a number of years of martial arts training, that I thought, you know, I want to test these skills out. But you know, how do you test these skills out? You know, what are your options? How does somebody go about testing these things? That you can either take some kind of a frontline security role. You could become a doorman. You could become a bouncer, policeman. You could join the military. You could go out and start fights and test your skills out, or you can do it within the sporting arena. You know, so I chose to test my skills out against an equally trained, skilled fighter who's, you know, spent the last 8 weeks preparing and training for the fight in the same way that I have, and that's how I got into MMA.
Okay, so you say that there was this underlying yearning, to live the ideals of the martial warrior, with a Sikhi sort of aspect to it.
Yes.
With that, and Wing Chun also, you've become a bit of an enthusiast for Shastra.
Yes.
It's fair to say.
Yes.
So how did that come about? What was the genesis of that passion?
It must have come from my father. It must have come from the stories of Sikh history, going to Sikh museums as a young kid, and seeing my dad's weapon collection. Always had a huge fascination for it. From a young age, I started learning Gatka. You know, for me, I remember, you know, being 8, 9 years old, you know, having a kirpan, a sword in my hand, or a marhatti, or a lathi, or a barshi, was like an extension of the body. You know, I would always have something in my hand, and, you know, I'd be spinning it around in the garden. So there was always a love for weapons, and that's continued with me, you know, to this day. Even now, you know, I've got an extensive collection of edged weapons, blunt type of weapons, firearms. You know, I've got, you know, I am an enthusiast. So
you're a licensed firearm holder?
Yes.
Yeah. Club owner, club membership,
yes.
And the rest of it. But with regard to the Shastra Vidya, you've alluded to the fact that you did Gatka for a little while. Are you trained in the use of all of the weapons you own? Because you do have quite a large collection.
Yeah, certainly. You know, I've never been somebody to admire weapons from a distance. You know, I've always wanted to take a hold, you know, get used to the weight, get used to the balance, become comfortable with it. You know, a lot of weapon skills is about becoming comfortable and accustomed to your weapon of choice or your weapon of interest. So, you know, I kind of scare my family members at home. I've always got something in my hand, waving it around, you know, practicing moves in the mirror, you know, sparring. I've got some padded swords. You know, me and my dad sometimes will spar each other with these padded swords, which are curved like a talwar is. You know, and it's great fun. Yeah.
And just out of interest, what is your weapon of choice?
Weapon of choice, I like a single saber, and I like my barabor, my 12-bore shotgun.
12-bore. Okay. Well, we're talking stereotypes. You've destroyed that stereotype of a Panjabi person being railroaded into a profession, a white-collar profession. You see, you've become a doctor. You didn't allow that to be the limit of your experience on this realm. So you've become a martial warrior, so to speak, with, you know, the martial aspects of Shastra, of competitive grappling and fighting, boxing, MMA. The stereotype when we're talking about martial arts, there's another stereotype that you've destroyed, and that stereotype is of a dastartari fighter. being restricted by his dastar, by his long hair. You've put that to bed. Has it ever been a point where you felt restricted by your own case in the throes of a fight?
No, honestly, I can't say that I have. I was very, very surprised to hear from other colleagues that this was an issue for Sikhs, because for me, I had been brought up on stories about great Sikh wrestlers, how wrestling was a part of our tradition, from Guru Angad Dev Ji's time, Sri Guru Har Gobind Ji's time, wrestling was encouraged, how wrestling was a popular sport for Sikh soldiers. Hari Singh Nalwa was a great wrestler, and how, I'd seen lots of black and white movies and even contemporary footage of Sikh wrestlers with patke, wearing these patke that they're tying to their chins to stop it from slipping off. To me, the physical sports that we have in Punjab were what Sikhs do, is what Punjabis do. So for me, it just seemed very natural. And I was very surprised to hear that some people have an issue with it and they felt like they couldn't compete because they had Dari and case. It was so easy. I mean, I just tied my hair at the back of my head, and then, I used to jump in. And when I was practicing and I didn't have time to tie my hair at the back, I would wear a rugby scrum cap, or like a wrestling ear guard, which would keep my patka on and keep my case intact. And, often when you're training, your patka does come off. Your dari gets messy all over the place in your face. Your case will get everywhere, and that's what happens when you fight. That is a part of fighting. And you have to make friends with the fact that you're going to get a bit sweaty, you're going to get a bit dirty, and you're going to get a bit messy. And if you can't make friends with that fact, then maybe these kind of activities are not for you.
Absolutely, yeah, spot on. With regard to the restrictions that you haven't faced,
yes,
has it ever been an opponent or a promoter that said, "Hold on, what are you going to do with your hair, mate?" Has that ever occurred?
I think possibly somebody maybe made passing comments, but it was never something which resonated with me deeply. It was always just like...
It's never been a consideration before the fight?
No,
Somebody saying, well, I don't mind fighting you, the weight's fine, everything's fine, but I'm not sure about your headgear, I'm not sure...
Yeah. In all honesty, it's not even if a comment of that nature was made or something like that was said, I don't think I would pay much attention to it, or I don't think it would it would bother me too much. I think it would just be like water over a duck's back, to be honest with you, because I think the important thing is to stay on track and keep focused on your goal and keep doing what you're doing. So unless there's something which is actually preventing me from doing an activity, and there's actually something something tangible which is actually an obstacle that I need to circumvent in some way, then it's just an opinion or a comment, and I haven't got time to sit and reflect and take on board every comment which comes my way. Like Winston Churchill says, you can't stop and throw stones at every dog that barks.
Absolutely.
In the same way, any comment that somebody makes or any issue somebody takes with you, you can't necessarily just take it too seriously, I don't think.
No. Have you had much of that? Have you had many sort of racially motivated factors to deal with when you're competing, for example, in boxing?
I think I've had one or two comments. But again, it's just so, to me, it's just so meaningless and so unimportant that it really, it wouldn't make any... I mean, I think I remember when I had my first kickboxing fight and I heard somebody shout in the audience and somebody said, F off Monty, this is not a cricket match, something like that. And to be honest with you, I just laughed. Because 5 minutes into the fight, I was actually smashing this guy up and I was pulping him, and then Fair Chupoge.
Absolutely, yeah. But you do look like Monty. Like, yeah. It hadn't occurred to me until now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a fair comment. That's not really a racially angry.
No. So like I said, it's not something which, even now, if you're going to be in the public eye, whether as a sports person or any type of person that is known, or not even person that's known, anybody that's doing anything, you are going to attract some negativity, and you are going to attract unfair comments, and it's just a part of life.
Just hate in general.
Just hate in general.
There'll be people that hate you for no reason other than the fact that you exist, yeah?
Yeah.
Gianu, and welcome back to Encounters. We're still here with Subaig S Kandola, musician, doctor, MMA fighter extraordinaire. Paji, before the break, we were talking about your historically who you are. You're pretty much a Panjabi, a doctor, an MMA fighter, a martial warrior. But moving ahead, you still refusing to bow to the limitations of what regular people, you know, how they live their lives. You're not content with just being a doctor. No. The martial aspects of your life hasn't been able to contain your aspirations. So you've moved on to becoming a satirist.
Yes.
So your videos, they've been quite popular,
yeah.
Like millions of hits. What made you do those? Basically, are you a political person?
I wouldn't say I'm a political person. I'd say I like to entertain, and it's funny because, you know, when some people ask me this question, when I made my comedy skits, it was very instinctive and intuitive when I made them. And now looking back, I'm kind of trying to rationalize them and try and say, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But to be honest with you, I think it was just pure performance. And you know, maybe there were thoughts running on in my mind, and maybe, you know, there were various ideas that I had, and it came out in a comedy skit. It was actually, it sounds a bit sort of cliche, but it was literally just art for the sake of art.
With contemporary topics
yes.
and subjects that were very relevant at the time.
Yeah.
You had a Shastar one.
Yes.
That was hilariously sort of accepted,
yes.
or you know, received.
Yes.
You had another that was sort of alluding to the controversy of the Anand Karaj and,
yes.
and interfaith interfaith Anand Karaj ceremonies.
Yes.
Was it the backlash from India or from Sikhs in the UK that you had to sort of clarify that this is satire and that I'm not being serious, and the Gurdwara that you had pretended to be the General Secretary or the Pradhan of,
yes.
didn't actually exist?
Yeah,
It was.
I think well, certainly the reaction was a lot stronger in India. I think a lot of people because at the time when I made that skit, it was a contemporary issue.
Yeah.
It was a very contemporary issue. But you know, in India, it wasn't probably on the radar as much as it was in the UK. So a lot of people in India, they didn't understand the humour. Parts of the skit were in English, small parts of it were in Panjabi, and they thought that I genuinely was a Gurdwara Pradhan, you know, who was marrying donkeys and camels in the Gurdwara. You know, and they
alluding to bestiality.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So you know, they were outraged, you know, and the video went viral, and there were a lot of angry people, you know, seeing that video. So
you clarified it. After the clarification, did it subside or did it continue?
It subsided
almost instantly.
Almost instantly. I mean, I had a few silly comments coming on after that, you know, dripping in and out. But to be honest with you, that clarification video that I put out killed it.
Oh, that's close to hear, because the satire was something that was new to you know, Punjabi diaspora community.
Certainly, when it comes to Sikh issues,
yeah,
you know, it's not something which is normally done. You know, it's not the norm. You know, making jokes on, which is something I've realised now. It didn't really occur to me at the time, to be honest with you. The thought didn't enter my mind that this is going to provoke such a you know, such a reaction at the time.
Strong reaction.
Strong reaction.
Was a strong reaction.
Yeah. But you know, I talk about it in the negative, but actually it also received a very positive reaction.
Yeah.
A lot of people really enjoyed it. A lot of people found it really funny. People who don't go to the Gurdwara, people who are not necessarily practicing Sikhs, or you know, they were able to engage with it, which to me highlighted that you know, humour is something which can actually engage a lot of people, which otherwise, you know, would be excluded.
And have a look at a subject that, from a logical point of view, through satire,
yes,
allows you to delve into a situation that otherwise is very serious, and people are afraid to engage the subject material. With regard to that, do you find yourself sort of commenting on or looking at Sikh issues through a sort of satirical point of view, even when you're not on camera, when you're looking at Sikh issues that are somewhat serious, where people are, you know, only a stone's throw away from becoming serious and threats of violence and stuff like that. Which the Anandkaraj issue was one of those issues. It had the potential to turn violent.
Yes.
When you see things like that, do you think that the Panjabi or Sikh community requires a sense of humour, that it needs to be able to look at itself in the prism of the world community and see what you're actually doing, how you're behaving, how you're interpreting?
Yes, of course. I mean, you know, to me, you know, I love being a Sikh. I'm very proud to be from the Sikh community. But it's important to reflect, you know, on ourselves and to reflect on our culture, you know, and our community as a whole. And this, to me, is a sign of weakness and a sign of lack of development if we're not able to you know, explore sensitive issues and to be able to touch on them in a light-hearted manner, you know, and explore them in a different way.
Okay, so you say, you know, a lack of development.
Yes.
Would you say, as a Sikh community, we're not mature enough to be able to sit down and rationalise these sort of circumstances? Because as the generation that we are born and bred British.
Yes.
We have an education. We have a rounder view of things than the Sikhs in the Punjab, who are restricted to what media content they can observe, and therefore they tend to be more polarised in their thinking and their adaptation of their, you know, religion to the wider world. In sense of that maturity, do you believe that the Sikh community isn't, our generation, isn't as mature as it should be, or you would like it to be?
It's a difficult question for me to answer. I think that we as a community are like any other community. I think people are people. You know, we share the same gene pool as the rest of the human race. You know, we have our issues just like any other community does. I would like to see more satire and more, you know, humorous discussion of topics in general, and I think that's a gap. That's a gap that we don't have at this stage. I can't put it down to, you know, the Sikh community not being mature enough, because I think we've got such a variety of different people. You know, we've got mature people, we have immature people, we have educated people, we have uneducated people. So for me to make a sweeping statement like that would be unfair to all the educated people out there, to all the artists out there, you know, who do appreciate change. But I do find that we have a large section of society that tends to act first and think after.
Okay, when I was talking about maturity, I was